Hi everyone! So I wanted to make a video on how to do dip powder nails. So today I'm going to be doing a Christmas manicure, and I am using Snowy Pine and Sleigh Bells Ring. And it's going to be kind of like a glitter ombre. Here's an example. I just did my other hand. So I did mostly green and then some glitter on this one with a glitter ombre on the middle finger. And my nails are really short right now because I had a casualty earlier because I was doing laundry without my nails done, and this one decided to break, so I had to make them all short. So I'm gonna see how cute I can make them. I'm so used to long nails, this feels kind of weird. Okay, so first, what's really important about dip nails is nail prep. You want to make sure your nails are prepped really well so that the dip powder stays on. So after I took my last dip powder off, I washed my hands with dish soap and I let them dry for at least 10 minutes. It's important not to do this with wet nails. So first, I'm going to go ahead and push my cuticles back. So you shouldn't have to do anything super rough and nothing should hurt. You're just going to gently push back any skin that is on the base of your nail, because you don't want to accidentally get dip powder on your cuticles because it'll start to lift as your nails grow. And then the dip powder might not last as long. So this is pretty fast, but very important. Okay, last one. Okay, and then the next step of nail prep is to lightly buff your nails. Keyword is lightly. The reason some people say that going to the salon or doing your nails damages them is because of over buffing. It's not the product itself, it's if you buff too much of your nail. So since I already had dip powder on, my nails aren't too shiny, and that's what you want them to look like. They look really ugly right now. I guess all the dip powder didn't come off this one. But really what you want to do is lightly buff using your buffer until all of the shine is gone on your nails and any extra product is gone. This is a little messy, so that's why I'm doing this over an old dish towel to kind of keep everything from blowing around the counters, and then that way I can just throw this in the wash after. So really lightly buffing, making sure not to buff your skin, because that can really hurt. Okay, so I still have some leftover dip powder on this nail, but that'll be okay because when I touch it, it still feels pretty flat and a nice smooth surface. Okay, so next we are going to file our nails. So I had kind of done some filing earlier because, like I said, I had to make them all an even length when I had that nail break. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of clean up the edges just to kind of make sure that they've got nice straight edges and that they're a length I like before I start doing dip powder. They don't have to look perfect because we're going to file them again after the dip powder. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and use my brush to kind of brush off any nail dust that's on there. So we're starting with a nice clean surface. All right, and now our prep is done. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to start with the green Snowy Pine, and we're going to use our number one. The number one is basically an adhesive that you're going to coat on your nail before you dip it into the powder. So what's important is to do one nail at a time. So I'm going to do a really, really thin layer on my thumb, making sure not to get it on the cuticle. And after I coat my thumb, I'm going to put this brush back in the bottle. So you just want a nice thin layer. And now I'm going to go ahead and dip my thumb at about a 45-degree angle and pull it directly out. I'm going to kind of tap my thumb so any extra powder comes off. And it looks like this. Not super exciting yet, but you just got to trust the process. So I'm going to use this orange stick. I'm going to go around my cuticle edge really gently to kind of get off any powder that may have been on my skin. Now this liquid takes a few seconds to dry, so it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to kind of get off any mistakes or anything that is too close to your skin. All right. You want to make sure to do a thin layer, because if you use too much liquid, it'll kind of get pushed back and you'll get these weird ridge lines when you dip it. Okay, I'm going to kind of scoot this over here so y'all can see how much liquid I get on the brush. So I'm going to wipe on the inside neck of the bottle, both sides, and then as you can see, there's not a ton on my brush. It's not dripping. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do my next finger. Making sure not to get any on my skin, because wherever the liquid goes is where that powder is going to stick. So I'm going to go close to the cuticle, but not on it. All right, now we're going to kind of shake it to loosen the powder and then dip at a 45-degree angle. Tap off the excess, and then go around the cuticle line really gently with your orange stick. And moving on to the next finger. Nice thin layer. And I'm putting this green color on all of my nails for the first layer. Okay, last finger for the first layer. Nice thin layer. Especially on the pinky, I make sure there's not too much liquid on the brush, because I do not want it to run onto my skin. What's really nice about these liquids is that they're self-leveling. So as long as you have the right amount and you spread it around, it will level before you put it into the powder, so that you don't get too much in one area of your nail. Okay, so I'm going to let these dry for a few seconds. While these dry, I'm going to find my brush. So this is a nice brush for dip powder because it has soft bristles. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use it to brush off the excess powder on our nails before we move on to the next layer. I'm just going to gently brush, get all of that extra powder off. And you do this between every layer of dip powder. Okay, now we're done with our first layer. Doesn't quite look pretty yet, but we're gonna keep going. I typically do 3 layers of color, is what gives you that really pretty look that's more opaque and not transparent. So now we are going to work on this nail where I did the glitter after the color. So I'm gonna get Sleigh Bell's ring, super pretty glitter color. With glitters, it's really important to mix them first before you dip your nail because the glitter can kind of settle. Let me get that ready to go. And then I'm gonna go ahead and get my number 1 again. And this time, I'm only going to put it on my ring finger. I'm gonna coat the whole nail. Okay, and then I'm gonna dip it into the glitter. Ooh, I love the sparkle in this one. Glitter makes me super happy. All right, let me get that orange stick so we can get off any extra glitter that might be too close to our skin. Perfect. And this is really the key to perfect, good-looking cuticle lines. This and filing, which we will do later. Okay, so now I'm gonna put a second layer of glitter on this finger. But before I do that, I make sure it's dry. And then I'm gonna brush off any extra powder super lightly. And then I'm gonna put another coat of number 1 on. And then dip. Okay. So that sparkle looks really good. You really shouldn't be able to see the green underneath it. So I want to make sure they're equally covered. We can brush off the excess. Perfect. So now we're going to switch back to our green, and we're going to do 2 more layers of green on our green only fingers so far. So once you get the hang of this, it actually goes pretty fast. Typically when I do my nails, I like to enjoy it and take my time, and I watch an episode of my favorite show. Right now I'm watching The Bachelorette, which is what I would be watching if I wasn't recording this video. Okay, so I'm making sure not to use too much liquid and to evenly coat the nail and to get close to the cuticle line, but not touch it. Okay, and dip. Tap, tap, tap. skipping this one because that one's the glitter nail, and moving on to the pinky for the second layer of green. Super thin layer. I make sure to have less liquid on my brush for the pinky nail since it's smaller than the rest. Perfect. So now I'm gonna wait just a few more seconds before I brush the extra dip powder off. Using super light strokes. Okay, so now on to our third layer of green. Okay. And sometimes on the end of your orange stick you can have a bunch of dip powder build up. And if it dries, you can actually just use your buffer and you can buff it right off. I'm going to do that really fast. I want it to still have a pretty good point so I can be more precise with my cuticle lines. Okay. Perfect. So this green is looking real nice after a few coats. Really like how this is turning out. Super Christmassy to start the holiday season. Okay, so now we are going to do the glitter ombre nail, which sounds difficult, it's actually super easy. Just like this. And what glitter ombre is half the nail has glitter and then the rest, slowly fades to no glitter. So what I'm going to do is make sure that the glitter side lines up with my glitter nail, which is the left side of this nail. And what I'm going to do is brush off any extra powder on here. And I'm going to get my number 1, and I'm only going to coat half the nail with liquid. I'm going to get my glitter ready. My sleigh bells ring. Okay. Sometimes it helps to kind of tilt the nail towards you. And I'm going to start with the outside of my nail, slowly getting some number 1 there. And then just extend that a little bit to cover half my nail. And you can tell where you put it because it's kind of shiny. And now I'm going to get my brush. I'm going to dip my brush so that there's dip powder on it. Turn my nail. And then tap the brush so that the dip powder goes from the brush to my nail. Get closer. Just like this. All right, and now before we tap the powder off, we want to make sure our nail is really turned so that the powder can cascade down like a waterfall. Gonna tap, 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 tap. Perfect, look at that. Okay, so I'm gonna get my cuticle stick. Do the same thing we always do. And typically with glitter ombre, I do 2 layers of the glitter, just because I tend to mess the first layer up to some extent. So I just want to make sure I have a really good coverage, that the glitter goes all the way to the tip of my nail and the side. I'm just waiting for this to dry before we brush everything off. Okay, so I'm just going to lightly brush. Perfect. So I'm going to get a little bit of number 1 on my brush. And this time I'm really just going to do the very edge of my nail on the left side to kind of fill that in with glitter. Making sure to get all the way close to the cuticle line and to the tip of the nail. I'm going to hold it over the jar. Here's my brush. Dip, 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 dip. And then tap, 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 tap. Dip, dip, dip. Tap, 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 tap. Perfect. And now it's time to tap the finger to get all the extra powder off. Make sure your finger is still turned so it can cascade down like a waterfall. Tap, tap, tap. Beautiful. Okay, so now we're going to let this dry before we brush off the extra powder. What I like to do, especially for glitter nails, but really all my manis I've now been doing this for, is I dip them in a layer of clear before moving on. And I think this makes it so that your mani's extra shiny. And also, if you have glitter, when we get onto the buffing stage, if you buff the glitter directly, it can actually change the color of the glitter. Or you buff off your glitter, which is never fun, so you want super glittery fun nails. So I'm going to get my clear ready, and we're going to do a layer of clear over each nail. Brush off any powder. Get a different brush because this one now has glitter on it. Okay, so same process as we do with the color. We're going to do a thin layer of number 1 on our entire nail and then dip it in the powder. And dip at a 45-degree angle. So the nail will almost look white, but it's actually clear powder. It's just a little deceiving at first. It'll just look ugly for a second. Okay, I'm just going to continue doing this for all of my nails. All right, so now we have clear on all of our nails, and we are ready to move on to the next step. Okay, I'm gonna give these a second to dry. And then just gonna gently brush off any powder. And this is when we move on to step number 2. And 2 is the activator. And what this does is the dip powder is actually acrylic powder, and the activator activates it to make it hard. I'm running low on this, so I have to tilt the bottle funny. Okay, so you can't really mess this up. You just plop it on your nail so that the whole thing is absorbed. And it kind of changes colors so you can tell when it absorbs into all of your nails. You want to make sure to get the tip of your nail also. You want to make sure you apply enough to absorb through all of your layers of dip powder. So sometimes I'll go ahead and do a second layer to be really sure. I got glitter all over this one. I'm not going to complain about it, a little extra glitter. It might buff off. We'll see. And it's this step that's going to make your manicure really durable, so you really don't want to skimp on the activator, because this is what's activating that acrylic to become hard and strong. Okay, so now we are going to wait 2 minutes. That's about how long it takes for this activator to work. And after 2 minutes, we are going to start buffing our nails. When we start buffing our nails, we are going to start with this buffing block. Just has this black buffing area on 3 of the sides. I should have been playing some Christmas music while doing this. Would have been more festive. Okay, and another important thing with the buffing is when we do buff, you want to make sure not to get too close to your skin. We're going to start with the buffing block, and really we're just going to make sure we have an even surface of the nail. Luckily, with these liquids that are self-leveling and dipping at 45 degrees, everything's already pretty flat, so we're not going to have a ton of buffing to do. So that's why it's really important to follow the steps correctly. Originally when I started dipping my nails, I had a automatic nail drill thinking that that's what you had to do. But I would go a little too crazy with it and end up buffing too much dip powder off, and then my manicures would have like craters in them. So I have since stopped using that, and I've realized that this buffer is so much easier, just as fast, and you don't over buff. And the reason I say that you don't have to get too close to your cuticles with this is because we are then going to use this really super cool banana file to actually like get the edges of the nail, because you can move it like this to get the sides and right around the cuticle line. All right, I think we just have a few more seconds before we can start buffing. And you can tell when everything's activated because when you tap, it sounds hard. You kind of hear the click, which makes me really happy. I like that sound. Okay, so I'm gonna start with my thumb and just buff across. I don't go at any particular angle. Kind of go side to side and up and down. I don't know, other people might do it differently. But you can tell once you've buffed an area because it kind of lightens up a little bit and looks powdery. So I can see that this is kind of a different color, so I need to buff there more. It doesn't look like these glitter flakes are gonna come off. A little bit of extra glitter in the mani. Okay, so now that I've kind of buffed the whole thing, looks really ugly and my finger looks super dry, but that's okay. We're gonna move on to the next nail. Buff, buff, buff. And I'm not applying too much pressure. Just going really gently. All right, that looks pretty good. And the reason we did that clear layer of dip is so that when we're buffing, we are only taking off clear dip powder, if anything, and we're not messing with the color or the glitter. Because like I said, if you buff glitter directly, it will change colors. Okay, so now we're going to get that banana file I was talking about earlier. It's a 100 and 180 grit. I'm going to start with the smoother side. I only really use this side for glitters, especially chunky glitters. So I use the straight side to get the sides of my nails. I'm just going to be really gentle and just kind of find that little niche between my nail and my skin and gently file. You do not want to push too hard because you don't want to take too much dip powder off. And this just creates a nice smooth edge where the dip powder ends. That way you don't have any areas that are bumpy, because if you have bumpy areas, it could cause the dip powder to lift a little bit and eventually just kind of pop or chip off the sides. You also want to make sure, because you can kind of file any dip powder that's on your skin. So if you have dip powder going from your skin to your nail, when your nail starts to grow out, it's going to create a little bit of an issue there where it'll become unstable and come off. And really with dip powder, the reason I originally started using it is because it can last over 2 weeks. It makes your nails super strong, so if they don't bend, I can open soda cans with my nails without worrying at all. So it's super nice, and then your nails can grow really long. Until then you decide to do laundry while doing a manicure and your nail chips. Just that happened to me earlier. Okay, so after I do the edges, I'm going to kind of look. So see right here, I have some dip powder going from my nail to my skin. Looks super gross. I'm going to just kind of gently, using the harder grit of this, the 180, I'm just going to gently try and get between my nail and my skin to get that unstuck. Perfect. Now I'm going to do the very base of my nail at the cuticle line. Ideally, I flip my finger this way, but it's very hard to do with the thumb. So I'm going to start out this way and just really gently, using the finer grit, just kind of at an angle, go across my cuticle line. I start by going just one direction. And really the goal of this is to just make a nice even area here where the dip powder ends. So that once again, there's no lifting or uneven bumpy surfaces that can make your nail dip powder weak. And then you can kind of work on getting this curve right here. What I do is I just follow my nail from the side and then around. And I go about a quarter way across the cuticle line. And then I can do the middle part of the cuticle line. And sometimes it can be a little hard to see through all of that dust, so I will get a toothbrush to get rid of all that so I can really see what I'm doing to see if I like the way that line looks. Yeah, and I'd say that looks okay. So now we can move on to our next finger. I'm going to start with the finer grit on the flat side of the file. And then I'm going to move my hand this way to do the cuticle line. Just following that circle. Okay, and then the next finger. So buffing can either take a really, really long time or not very long at all. It's really down to the technique of dipping your nails. So if you use thin layers of the liquids and dip at an angle and make sure that the powder, you kind of stir it or shake the container before opening it so that it's loose. That'll help it lay better on your nail so that you don't have to do a ton of buffing. Which what I'm doing today is kind of the average amount of buffing. And then I'm going to make sure I like the shape of my nail because the dip powder can sometimes extend your nail and you need to file a little bit of it off. So I'm just going to go along the edges a little bit. So especially when you first start out doing your own dip powder, it can take time. So you don't want to be rushed. You want to pick a day that you have time to just focus on your nails, which I know can be really, really hard. But you'll enjoy it better and your nails will look better. I actually find it really relaxing to just spend time making your nails pretty. Okay, so I'm just working on, this edge isn't quite straight from the dip powder. So I'm just going to go along with my file in a straight line. Sometimes you have to use the tougher grit. I also find it a lot harder to file nails when they're short because then you have the skin of your finger you're dealing with. Okay, last finger. I'm just pushing really, really lightly because I do not want to hurt my cuticles. That is never fun. Okay, so now everything is buffed. So I'm going to use this toothbrush to just get rid of all the dust so I can really just look over them once more and make sure I like how everything looks before we get on to the fun part that makes your nails super shiny. Okay, so then once you like how everything looks, you get your number 2 again, and I'm going to do another coat on all of my nails, making sure to also get the edges. So your number 2 activates the dip powder, but it also helps activate the top coat to make it dry. So this part is pretty time sensitive. So you want to make sure, you know, if you're like me doing laundry while you do your nails, you want to make sure you have a little bit of time, you know, maybe 15 minutes, that you'll be able to just focus on your nails. Okay, so I'm going to wait 1 minute, exactly 1 minute. I'm going to make sure I have a paper towel ready because after 1 minute, you are going to gently wipe each nail to get any excess activator off. And then we're going to do our number 3, which is the top coat. And then we'll be done. Okay, so I think about 30 more seconds. Should have put these lids on earlier. I was almost asking for an accident and tipping all of these over. Okay, so I folded this paper towel in half, and I'm making sure it's a clean paper towel on the side I'm using. I'm going to gently wipe each nail, not pushing too hard, just gently wiping it. That way if there's any activator, it will come off. You don't want too much activator on your finger when you do the top coat, because like I said, it activates the top coat, and you don't want it to activate the top coat while the top coat's still on the brush, because then your brush will harden. So then I'm going to flip over the paper towel and get my number 3. And for the first layer of number 3, you just do 3 quick strokes over your nail. You don't want to go too slowly because that's when the liquid can start hardening on the brush. Now I have not been super careful with our number 3 with Zippy Dip, and I have not had any issues, but you want to be very, very careful. Some brands seem to be more picky than others. I'm going to start with my thumb. I'm going to do 3 quick layers. What is really, really important, wipe your brush on this clean paper towel before putting it back into the bottle. That way, if there's any activator on the brush, you are not contaminating your whole bottle of liquids. And do 3 quick strokes. Next finger. I'm going to wipe my brush on a new spot of the paper towel before putting it back in the bottle. So after your first layer of top coat, you can see how it starts to get kind of tacky or like not super shiny looking. You go directly on to your second layer of top coat. With this one, you can go slower and really cover the whole nail. And then I like to seal the tip as well. And this top coat is so shiny. I love it so much. And this shine lasts a very long time. I think the longest I've left my nails on using our liquids was 2 weeks. And it looked like I had just done them that day before. Once again, wipe the brush on a new area of the paper towel before putting it back in your number 3 bottle. All right. So these just take about 2 to 3 minutes to dry. If you have time, I always like to just wait a little bit longer before touching them or doing anything, too strenuous. But yeah, that is how you do the dip powder on your nails. It's pretty easy, and obviously you get a lot better with practice. All right, well, I hope this video was helpful, and I'm anxious to see all of your cute manis. All right, thank you for watching.